recording. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today to welcome Saaj Patel. And today we have his presentation about internship with Chiang Mai University. And he will ask some more about the experience as Fulbright English Teaching Assistant in France. So now he's live from France, basically. So Saaj is US alumnus. He studied anthropology, French, and applied linguistics. So with his passion to language, teaching, learning, and culture, he's always sought for opportunities to do things related to language and culture. He co-founded French Club at UH, and he joined the internship program with the Chiang Mai University, and now he's a Fulbright scholar in France. So, Saaj, welcome.
Hi, everybody. So as Dr. Duran said, my name is Saaj. I'm currently in France, Paris specifically, where I'm spending the year as an English teaching assistant. I'll be here until May, but before that, I studied at UH. But after graduating from UH and before Fulbright, I had the opportunity to do an internship with Chiang Mai University in Thailand as part of a Gilman scholarship I received in March 2020. So a little bit about me that we kind of just went over. I applied to Fulbright last year during my senior year of university to do English teaching because that's always been a field that's interested me. And I decided why not to do it in France for a year and see what that's like in the education system. And I studied anthropology, English, and French. So a little bit about the Gilman Scholarship Program, which is what helped me fund my opportunity with Chiang Mai University. The Gilman Scholarship Program is for US citizens who are students and receiving the Pell Grant, as well as going to a 2 or 4-year university or college. And it's for study abroad programs or internships. And since last year, the pandemic was happening, I was able to use this money for an online internship program as opposed to only in person. And I thought that was pretty awesome because I was able to defer it from 2020 when I was originally supposed to study abroad to this year when I did my online experience. So just a little bit about me and my study abroad experience. I had never done it before, and going into it when I decided to apply for everything, I wanted to go to France because I studied French, and so I thought it'd be awesome to get to expand my knowledge about language as well as the culture. So I had found a program that would be in Lyon, France, for last summer. However, things didn't pan out as they were supposed to, and I was forced to defer my scholarship to this year, to 2021. And with the help of the study abroad office at University of Houston, everything worked out great, and I was able to find another program that suited my needs and interests. The cool thing about the Gilman program is that they're focused on helping students get experiences abroad where you can earn skills in the field as well as with the help of mentorship teachers. It's also focused on individual growth. So while they require that the program be credit bearing and something that you can take back to your home institution, they also look for programs that will help you grow as an individual and as well as a professional. they don't have a minimum length on their program. And so for me to have a summer program where it was a little over a month and a half was pretty great because originally I was supposed to study abroad for a semester. And when COVID-19 hit and everything was so uncertain, I was really glad that the program was accommodating to changing my program length, changing my program completely, and finding something else that I could do instead. Um, with the help of my study abroad program at University of Houston, I looked into a program with USAC, University Study Abroad Consortium. They were the program with whom I was going to do the Lyon program for a semester studying French language and culture. But this year, after I decided to defer it, my scholarship to after graduation, um, I decided to shift to an internship program because to get different skills was pretty important. Um, I wanted to stay within the realm of English language instruction, which was one of the topics, one of the fields that they include in their internship programs. Um, I was able to look at what the available countries were, and luckily USAC was working with Thailand for a summer program because they just happened to be having classes, but also it was something new that I had never experienced. I didn't learn much of the Thai language, um, or I suppose the culture much, but I did learn about values that were valued within the country, but also at the host institution. Um, it was very different because it wasn't the experience that I expected, where I was, using French language skills and using that to build a bond between me and students or me and the teacher. But instead, I was able to start fresh with a different university in a different city that I had actually never heard of. Um, and it was kind of overall a new experience. So within the virtual internship program that USAC offered, they had two parts, two components, which were the global internship seminar as well as the virtual internship. At the beginning, I thought they were kind of the same. I thought I was confused what the difference was. But I quickly learned that while the internship was my time with my mentor and with the actual English language instruction internship, the seminar was another online way of learning about different cultures as well as learning more about the host institution that I was working with. So the global internship seminar was on Teams, Microsoft Teams, and there were weekly discussion boards where the professor would give us different content to read or to look at or learn from um, that kind of pushed us to think harder about what our organization and host teachers were, teaching us about. Um, we learned something about Hofstade's dimensions, which one week while we learned what that is, the next week we took that information and applied it to what we had been experiencing in our week-to-week and day-to-day experiences with the institutions. So while I was partnered with a university, there were people who were partnered with NGOs, clinics. Um, those were the two that I remember because in the discussion boards, you interact with people from the same country or the same host country as you, but who aren't necessarily doing the same thing. So the person that was working with the clinic was working on communications and kind of marketing, but mainly thinking about how to get the word out and how they could use English in a way to engage different audiences, um, as well as education. Um, And then, of course, the virtual internship was my time spent with my mentor teacher. So for that, I again was with Chiang Mai University, which is located in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And I work specifically with the Department of the Faculty of Education. And there it was with Miss Jarvi Patkau or Ajaranja, because Ajarn is like teacher or instructor, and Ja was just what I called her. Um, and that part of the internship was 120 hours total, to be spent over about 11 weeks. I began at the end of May, or beginning of June, and that lasted until about the middle of August. And with Ajarn, it was kind of a multi-stage process where I first interviewed with her and the country advisor, to talk about my goals, what I was looking for, as well as what the instructor was looking for, in her expectations. And after that preliminary interview, we decided to go ahead with it. And after that, we began the standard of meeting once a week on Zoom, to talk about what I would be doing that week. And I would ask her questions about kind of like how the process was done and, um, what I might learn from that. This was really my first time working with a mentor teacher to come up with a lesson that I was actually going to perform in front of a class and, um, learn from her experience. Previously, I had also worked with, um, ESL classes at the University of Houston at the Language and Culture Center. But that was more in a, um, observation kind of style way where I didn't interact much with the students. Whereas here at Chiang Mai, I was, hands-on, or the online version of hands-on, um, where I could learn from how a lesson went and did that go well? Were my questions bouncing off the students? How could I adjust the lesson to their needs? Um, yes. So we met once a week on Zoom, and while the experience with University of Houston's Language and Culture Center was ESL, this was an EFL context where English is not a second language, for many of the students, or it's not used commonly, but rather it's a foreign language. And so students don't always have the opportunity to practice English, in the same way that ESL students might. So that was a whole nother, viewpoint of thinking about how, lessons should be worded, what level students might be at, because students don't necessarily always major in English. The students of hers that I, met with and interacted with, were majoring in English, so they already knew what I was talking about, and sometimes they could explain maybe a grammar point better than me because they had studied it, intensively in school, whereas, English was something that we just grew up learning. Um, it was a very eye-opening experience for me to talk with somebody, who has been accustomed to teaching EFL, because she first instructed me to come up with a PowerPoint, about any grammar point that I wanted. I would be choosing the grammar point, and after I met with her to talk about what a lesson using the inductive, teaching approach could look like. And off the bat, she easily told me that, um, I was talking too fast because I was practicing with her, as well as some of the adjectives that I was using, or the content was just, um, not irrelevant, but unfamiliar to students that I would then be working with. And so that was a good adjustment for myself and honestly for the lessons that I was coming up with, because I would have been talking about like baseball teams in Houston that, even though the name is just a proper name, it held no kind of weight for them or any kind of relevance. Um, so I learned a lot about that as well as inductive teaching because that is, I know it's teacher to teacher, but that was Ajarn's preference. And when I worked with her, she was able to explain why, and it helped me learn that not a deductive teaching style is always correct, but sometimes inductive makes more sense for either the lesson or the group with whom you're working. Um, at the end of the internship was my chance to give a final presentation, which took pardon, that looked like a lesson, and that was the lesson plan that I had been planning with her every week and learning more about. Um, she suggested practice questions, a communicative learning activity, and even a Kahoot because that was something that's popular with students because of not only the competitiveness, but the chance to learn from your mistakes and seeing how one answer might be better than the other, or even how two answers could be correct at the same time. Um, so yes, that was my internship experience with Chiang Mai, which was very, very valuable to see things from an EFL perspective, as well as um, from a student's perspective, because I wasn't exactly a student with her, but I wasn't also a teacher. So when I was doing the lesson plan with students, uh, they were very honest with me and able to tell me when I wasn't making any sense or when I needed to clarify something. Um, and I really appreciated all of that, which I was able to do through the help of USAC, as well as the Gilman Scholarship. Um, and so moving on, I'm currently doing a Fulbright teaching assistantship in Paris, France, where for 7 months I will be in and out of classrooms, just helping students improve their oral communication skills, which is honestly pretty awesome because I'm not expected to teach grammar or to look over essays or grade tests, but rather to stimulate conversation and get students talking about whatever interests them or teach them about things that happen in America, but in a way that students are encouraged to express themselves and put into practice English that they've been learning with their teachers. So in France, the English Teaching Assistantship, or the ETA, we are a cohort of 10 that are ultimately a part of TAPIF, which is a program run by the French government. Um, the government recruits assistants from all over the world in different languages. So there's Arabic assistants, German assistants, Spanish assistants, English, of course. Um, and we're all invited to France to teach our respective languages in all kinds of schools, whether that's primary, secondary, you name it. And um, our role is to, again, work on oral communication skills in any language. And the awesome thing about English teaching assistants is that we're not only from America or Canada, but there's assistants from all over the world. So I've met some assistants who are from India, from the UK. I met some the other day at one of my training, and they were from the Bahamas, Ghana, Kenya. And so you see a lot of diversity in postgrad students that are working as English teaching assistants. Um, For Fulbright, the ETAs are specifically in secondary schools or high schools um, throughout the country. And in Paris, we are specifically placed in the suburbs, which are historically um, underprivileged areas where students come from different socioeconomic backgrounds and who don't necessarily get as many chances to speak with English speakers or native English speakers. Um, and so it's an opportunity to work with students from different backgrounds. Um, and it's been really enlightening because it's been a chance to not only implement skills learned from my online internship this summer, but to also um, make my way around the country because learning French in the university is very different from actually speaking it with people on the street or people in the store. Um, it's been, I think, a very big growth process for me to um, not only adjust how um, I speak with other people, but also to learn how everybody communicates with each other. In high school, um, it's not exactly like American high schools. Here, their high school length is 3 years instead. I'm sorry, yes, 3 years instead of 4 years. And within these 3 years, students have to pick certain tracks that they would like to pursue later on in life. And so you'll see students who choose to specialize in English and science or philosophy and Spanish. So you see combinations of studies where as they go to different grades, they have to engage in longer hours of those particular studies, whereas they don't have the fully rounded experience of in their senior year having more an equal amount of time of science as English, for example, which is really interesting because you see some students who speak more English than others, but of course that's the point of specialties. Um, and so I've been here since the end of September, and I officially started at the beginning of October. Um, and it's been 2 weeks of observation. And after that, I moved on to having a bigger role in the classroom, whether that was taking half of the students and instructing them on the same thing, but encouraging more um, oral communication as opposed to teaching. And then after half of the class, we switch back again. Um, so I've been able to do that, but I've also had some times when teachers will let me have a bigger group of the students, not half, just a little bit more than half, um, and engage with them on a lesson that I've come up with pretty independently. So around the time of Halloween, um, I talked to students about Halloween, got their take on it, and was able to ask them what Halloween looks like in France. And we talked a little bit about the history of it. Um, the students here are pretty funny because their eyes will grow to like the size of the moon when they find out that so and so happens in America. I was talking to them about the Houston rodeo once, and when I explained to them mutton busting, where kids ride on the backs of sheep, they thought I was crazy. They thought I was making that up, and I had to prove it with pictures. Um, so being in a different country and immersing myself in the school experience has been a great way to not only work with IIE to teach about like American culture and what it's like in America, but also to learn about France and even talk about that comparatively. Um, when I was first introducing myself to students and their classes, I was often asked which I preferred, whether that was America or France. Um, but I told them pretty honestly that I preferred both because um, both have a lot to offer in terms of like food or travel, as well as like education. Education looks so different here versus there. Um, when I tell students that university isn't free in America, they think that's pretty crazy. And so it's just all of these cultural differences that students love hearing about. And I learn a fair amount about France, even from students, um, because they talk that way. And also it's just super cool. And so I also wanted to show some pictures of my high school where I work. Um, so here, this is just one of the typical classrooms. They're all equipped with projectors, which was a relief because prior to coming to France, TAPIF, the French government program, had talked about classrooms as if, not as if, but they let us know that some schools in some areas don't always have the technology that we're used to, or um, that lessons should also be planned independently of technology because it can't always be relied on. Um, but I was very happy to see that all of the classrooms at my school have projectors and that so far they've worked, knock on wood. Um, and have been very accommodating with lessons. This is just a picture of the courtyard. The students always gather there, even when it's cold. Between classes, you'll always see the courtyard packed, um, and students are always talking to each other there. This was just one of the lessons. In high school, the curriculum is based off of themes and axes that revolve around those themes. And there was one of the axes was about fake news. Um, Teachers have some liberty when it comes to choosing what they teach within these themes and axes because they're mainly guidelines versus strict uh, rules for what they can and cannot teach. Teachers are allowed to take the theme and uh, interpret it how they like. And so some teachers interpreted one of them as like fake news and instruction of what does real news look like versus um, news sources that you can't trust, which students thought was very interesting because teachers included examples of social media. Um, they loved talking about why they prefer Snapchat to Instagram or um, different things like that. Um, Here are some more pictures of the school. So this was also taken in the courtyard. Um, Art is a very important part of, I don't know, like any building here, it seems like. So even if a building looks simple, there's always artful touches such as like a beautiful door or the balcony on a lot of Parisian buildings. And you see that also reflected at this high school, where even inside the school, there are murals and a lot of posters up on the wall to celebrate that kind of diversity. This is the foyer of the high school. So they even have a foosball table in a lot of open space. This was also the courtyard, just facing the B building uh, where a lot of like science classes happen. Um, and very, very shocking to me, perhaps because I didn't experience this in my high school. Um, was the amount of security and perhaps just enforcement of rules. Here's like the outer gate of the high school where they close the gate whenever class is in session because students who arrive late aren't allowed to enter the school. They're forced to like wait outside or just not come in because um, they were late to class. And often whenever I began working, the person that was at the gate would not let me in because they confused me as one of the students. And I was like, no, no, like I just started working here. Can I come in? And they'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, yes, of course. Which was always pretty funny. And so, yeah, my experience at the high school has been very amazing, just learning from the students, but also helping students with conversation about all kinds of topics that could even get them to talk. Um, so, yeah, does anybody have any questions now, whether that's about Gilman or Fulbright?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, sure. Go ahead.
yes, I have a lot of questions. This is very interesting, very enriching to you and to the students too. I was wondering, as you were talking about your experience in Thailand and France, and I think it's a different, diverse combination of variables. I was thinking, do you think that there's an impact of the students' exposure to English if you compare your experience in Thailand and in France, compare it to the USA? Do you think there's an effect or an impact of their exposure to English? For example, in the USA, you know that they are immersed in in the language, and they are forced to speak it in foreign countries. Now, the second question is, what do you think is the effect of your knowledge of French in France and not knowing Thai in Thailand? What is the effect on you and on the student? Do you think it matters? And the third one and last is, you talked about the teaching learning approach that they used in Thailand, and it was inductive. And I'm surprised it's inductive, although Thailand is a pioneer in teaching new methods of language teaching. This is what I understood from our course. I consider this like rather traditional, and I'd like to know your take on that. Thank you.
Okay, so for the first question, I believe it was about the effect of, I'm so sorry, could you repeat the first question?
Sure.
Yeah, it's about
Exposure to
Exposure,
English
right.
between the Thai student and French student.
So I think that it varies a lot, just based on motivation and what a student is looking for in their education of English. I find that here in France, there's no differentiation really of language levels. And so there will be in a classroom like one student who could, um, and I say this kind of just because it's the freshest example in my head. During a written exam, there was a student who was only able to write 2 words, and those 2 words were from the prompt. And then a student who wrote front and back uh, just at length about the prompt. And so within the classrooms, you don't see, and even within the subject, you don't really see students being grouped by their competence, but rather just, everybody being together and then learning from each other in that way. And so their exposure to English probably has a big deal to do with how they understand each other, but also me. Sometimes I could be talking about something that they had been studying in class. And when I ask if they had understood me, I just get blank stares. And some people will even say yes, but then I'll ask them like what a word means, and I can't really get an answer back. And so I think students here, even if their friends speak English all the time or know more English, that doesn't necessarily mean that they do. And they're also in high school, so sometimes the lowest level in the high school is about the equivalent of a sophomore in America. And so just coming from middle school, they don't really know much English. And so with them, my way of speaking is very different from how I talk to the high school seniors. And whenever I was talking to the students in Thailand, who are college students who have been studying English at length for a while, but also at a university level, um, there was no real communication barrier. And they had probably been consuming a lot of English media that improved their vocabulary and knowledge. I say that they probably consume this media that helps them a lot, because here in France, there's a TV series that's American that's very popular called My Wife and Kids. However, nobody watches it in English. They always watch it dubbed. So they're not really learning anything significant about American English language, but maybe something about American culture. So that's kind of something about exposure that is hard to gauge, because while students here might like watch TikTok from like American TikTokers or British TikTokers, they don't learn the English that could help me engage with them in the classroom. Was the second question
Second
your
question,
question?
the language of the
Language.
instructor. Mhm.
Right. I think French has been a very big tool in helping me engage with students, because when they speak English, if they don't say everything perfectly, or if they say words out of order, it's my knowledge of French gives me kind of a boost in meeting them halfway and knowing what they mean to say, or anticipating what they're going to say, and helping them with that. Whereas in Thailand, when students ask me questions, or I was asking questions, I would, if there was ever a moment of misunderstanding or a lack of clarity, I wasn't able to go the extra step and add in like a Thai word, or give like a translation. I would just be forced to kind of take a step back and think of all the different ways that I could say my sentence with different vocabulary, or just shorter phrasing that could help them get to the point that I was trying to get to. And in ways, I kind of wish that students didn't know that I speak French, or that they thought I spoke less than I do, just because they kind of rely on that sometimes, especially with the younger students. They will ask the question to me in French, or they'll ask their neighbor. They'll whisper the question in French, without actually like, they'll get like 2 words into a sentence and then kind of just resort to French.
Yeah.
And I've heard from assistants at other schools that their host teachers have told the students that they don't speak a word of French, and that, you know, trying to talk to them in French would be useless. I don't necessarily agree with that approach, because I don't think that would just make students automatically better at English. But I like to think that the French would help me connect with them in a way that, you know, could affect their confidence, and you know, get them better at English.
Or maybe you get to
then-
understand how they see grammar. For example, adjectives
Exactly.
and nouns, you get to understand them better. Yes, I got your point. Thank you.
Mhm.
One more
And then
question I asked you
next
about the
question
approaches.
is method. Yeah,
Yes.
method, and then we go to Daryl question in the chat. Mhm.
Okay. About method, I'm not sure if it's regarded as traditional, just because I don't think I have as much experience or like have seen that much. But you might be right in that it's not very common. And it could just be particular to the teacher that I was working with, or
Mhm.
perhaps the faculty of education at that university. Um, Even here in France, I haven't noticed the same approach to teaching as I did in my time at Chiang Mai. Here, it's often very deductive, and students are kind of, given the rule, and then hopefully they retain it for their test. Um, but but I would like to think. mm, I think students here would benefit from an inductive approach every now and then, because I noticed that sometimes they kind of take their grammar points or grammar rules for granted, and I don't see it sticking as much as maybe the students who, um, the more advanced students who have probably on their own um, exposed themselves or been exposed to a lot more English, and therefore like done that process on their own. And I think some students might benefit from that. But it's kind of a shame sometimes because I see those advanced students uh, do the translation for the other students. Um, there are times when in my observation period, uh, after a teacher had finished talking about something in English, she would ask one student to translate what she just said, or give the gist of what she said to another student. Um, and that kind of helps like a global understanding, or ensures something like that. Whereas sometimes I notice students who are advanced just translate it automatically for their colleagues without really, asking, or, supporting in the way that one might think, without just doing the work for the other person. Did that answer the last question? I'm not sure.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And then Daryl questions in the chat about languages offered at the high school and how often they attend class. So how many hours a week maybe, and how long are classes daily?
So I know specifically at my school, or at least at my school, we have English, Spanish, Italian. Um, I'm trying to think if they have German. If they have German, it might be a small amount. My high school in particular is there's a thing in France called BTS, which is pretty much an associate's degree that can be, or the equivalent of an associate's degree that can be earned at the high school. And ours focuses on like international trade. And so because of that, English is more emphasized. I think those classes are almost exclusively taught in English. So that's kind of why I bring up, I don't know if there's like a language emphasis as opposed to an English emphasis. They attend class kind of irregularly. They don't have like A days or B days. It's a week A or week B kind of basis. And so based on that, the students who are in the last year of school, as well as the second year of school, so the second and third year of school, who have chosen to pursue English as their main studies, have to, of course, take more hours. And so I believe for second year students, that looks like something like 4 hours a week. And for third year students, that looks something like 6 hours a week. However, you can do different specializations. So there's AMC, which I believe just stands for the contemporary Anglophone world. So learning about different contemporary issues. And then there's LLCER, which translates to something about literature, language, and culture, but kind of with a more literary emphasis. But it's kind of a one or the other situation. You don't usually get both.
So it depends on their pathway, right, that they choose.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's pretty entirely up to the students and what they want to focus on.
Makes sense.
They sound like sophisticated. I was just saying that they sound like a sophisticated bunch of youngsters.
You could say that, yeah. Which I don't know how I feel. I think the school system was reformed a couple years ago. So I don't know 100% about it, but I think there might, like in like the last year of classes, like the third years, sometimes it seems like they don't necessarily want English anymore. I don't know. It's kind of case to case, of course, but even in those third year classes, you get students who, some don't really want to talk. They'd rather, analyze a poem while writing about it or talk.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting, to see the comparative education. When I was a exchange student in Denmark, I actually had English German path in high school in Thailand, but they didn't put me in the language specialized class in Denmark because they say I don't have enough languages to be in those classes. Because so they have Danish as the native language, and English is always there as their particular foreign language that all school already have. So I had English, I have German, and I have Thai and they don't have Thai there, right? But basically they have Latin classes, and you have to add one more of the languages, like either Spanish, Italian, or I think that's also French. And they said I didn't have enough languages to be in their language track in Denmark. Yeah, so I was put in math and science.
Oh, how was that?
Yeah. I was lost a little bit. And it's kind of like what we talked about this week. Well, so this week in that I just read, CBI, content-based instruction. Yeah, simultaneously with a language. It's like, oh my goodness, and they taught math or algebra to me in Danish, and Danish is so new to me. So I'm just like, yeah, it's very overwhelming for me. But yeah, it's so funny. They put me in math and science track because I didn't have enough languages to be in the language track.
That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other question? We have 3 minutes left. Or
where is your next stop?
We have time.
Saaj, where is your next stop?
In terms of
place, which country are you going to? That's so enriching. I really like just experiencing the culture.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess wherever the wind takes me. I've really enjoyed it here. I think I probably get like a very different experience than somebody who was placed in one of like the villages in France where like nobody speaks English. And for that, I guess I'm not too glad, I guess, because I mean I talk to people in French, but I think the experience of an internship with Thailand, where I didn't really know anything about the culture or the language, was very enriching. And I'd love to do something like that again, where instead this time I like learn that language. I think that would make it so much more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
The
do
most
they
that I learned
perceive?
about Thai was that when they
Yeah.
like laugh, like their ha ha
Yeah.
ha is like 555. That was
555.
really
Yeah,
it.
because 5 in Thai is 5. So we put 555. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. That was like the most Thai I learned.
Anyway, how do they perceive you as a foreigner being able to speak French or learning French?
I think their first shock, and this is something that I noticed that they do here and not in, or that's not as common in America, is they'll ask what my origins are. That's like one of the first questions.
Mhm.
Whereas like I think in America, we just kind of like take people for face value and we're like, this person looks like this, so they must be this. But here, I'm often asked like where I'm from, and I think it's maybe because they have that image of a white American who, speaks English, but I kind of changed that for them, and they think it's really interesting when, whenever I do speak French with them, because I tell myself like, okay, like I'm going to try not to, like I want to get through this class where we can like adjust our English to each other's, me to my students and the students to me, where we can like effectively make that communication. But sometimes I do kind of want to be clear about something, and so I'll like say a sentence in English, or I'll use like English syntax, but I'll throw in French words here and there so that I'm like absolutely sure that they understood.
It might not work.
And maybe that's cheating, who knows? But it's just so that I can, get that comprehension. And I think at first they thought it was weird. They didn't like it, or not that they didn't like it, but it's maybe more of like gratefulness. They're like, okay, like I wouldn't have gotten this unless he had used this word. Yeah. So
Thank you so much.
of course,
So
thank you for having
yeah,
me.
I'm so grateful.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. It's very valuable.
I wanted to ask more questions, but I know
Yeah.
we're tight on time.
So maybe you can send me a question and I send to Saaj. Yeah. And
Yeah, that was
yeah.
very good. Thank you
Yeah.
very much,
Yeah.
Dr. Duran,
Yeah.
for making this possible.
I think
And
it's
thank you, Saaj.
so contentful, and your experiences are so valuable. I'm glad I could talk to you today, and I'm so sad that a lot of people miss this because there's a lot of things that could be applicable.
It's their loss.
Yeah,
Sorry.
to our class right now.
Yeah, I will be talking about this to my own students. I think it's a wonderful experience. Congratulations.
Also, I'm recording this, so is it okay that I will stop recording now so that let me check.